Well, joining us now in studio to discuss this is Richard Hurst, a senior analyst at Ovum. Oh, Richard, thank you so much for your time. Looking at Eleanor Craig's statements earlier today, mentioning that, look, it is a good move, positive result for the likes of Cell C and definitely Telkom. Are you surprised by some of his sentiments?
I think, as Levan indicated in the previous slot, it's been long in the coming that this type of determination would be made by the sector regulator, ICASA. I think the key is that there's the asymmetry which has been put in place, which will allow the smaller players to gain a toehold into the market. And I think the real key is that the mobile network operators, their revenues are going to be impacted negatively and quite significantly, I think, in the near future.
You mentioned the asymmetry factor there. I'd like us to touch on that just a little bit later to really get into depth about that. But looking at the revenue streams that you mentioned there, Vodacom and MTN, because they're the largest player in the market, definitely being impacted. What might happen to that? Obviously, they need to improve revenue streams there.
I think initially we'll see a significant cut in terms of their revenue. The funny thing is that in the past, the mobile network operators have downplayed the interconnect and often referred to it as a zero-sum game. But now we can see that it's actually a significant chunk of their revenue, and they're going to have to make that up in some form. And I think they'll probably look at other services such as mobile data, mobile VAS, apps, all that type of thing.
I take it Vodacom will be a lot more hit given the fact that its operations in particular focus on the South African market. MTN, on the other hand, has strong revenue drivers all over Africa as well as East Asia.
Indeed. I think it won't knock MTN as hard because of the factors you've just mentioned. Also, the fact is that Vodacom have the larger pool of subscribers, so therefore the traffic in terms of the asymmetry, which we'll get into, will be negatively impacting them more so than MTN.
The termination rates being cut from about 40 cents to 10 cents, is that in line with our international counterparts? I
think it's more than in line with our international counterparts, but I think the key for both Vodacom and MTN is now that they understand the glide path and where they're going to, then they can make their plans accordingly as to what they can do to offset this impact on their revenues.
Eleanor Craig, Chief Executive of Cell C, earlier publishing a statement saying this is the first step in normalizing the South African telco market. Do you share these same sentiments, or do you believe that there's a lot more regulatory issues that need to be brought to the fore?
I agree with it. It's the first step, and in order to create competition, we need to foster competition. And in that, we need to level the playing fields to a certain degree. And I think the asymmetry will go a long way to assisting those smaller players to get a toehold into the market. It's not entirely going to change the landscape, but just give them the right impetus. Let's touch on the asymmetry. What exactly is it and how does it work? It just means that as opposed to, I'm trying to think of the smaller network will pay a lower fee for interconnect because of the fact that their pool of subscribers is smaller. So therefore, in a normal world, obviously they would be at a deficit. We've seen statements which have been released now by Vodacom, which they've said that they consider this a subsidy of the smaller networks.
If I was a Vodacom investor, I wouldn't be keen on it either.
There is an element of that. But in the rest of the world, where you've actually had these smaller players enter the market years afterwards, there is asymmetry in place in terms of the interconnect, and that's just to foster that competition. You mentioned that we need to see increased competition in the South African mobile space. Take it this industry has been in existence for just over 20 years or so. Would you say there is a need for that, given the fact that we've got 4 mobile operators? Yes, we have the 4 mobile players. And by competition, I don't mean injecting another player. Okay. I think it just means enabling the existing players to offer services on an equal footing with the rest.